Hello there. Today I'm lucky enough to be in Tuscany, in the Val di Cornia, and I'm at the Petra Winery. The wine I'm tasting is Petra 2022. So I hear you ask, what is Petra about? Is it the name of the winemaker's daughter? No, it's simply referencing the stone, and that's why we thought we'd record this here, because you can see the stone behind us. And Petra is the estate's flagship wine. The winery was established in 1997 by somebody called Vittorio Moretti. And Vittorio made his money prior to establishing wineries in construction. In fact, the size of the group is now 6 wineries, with other estates in Tuscany, in Lombardy, making Franciacorta, and also in Sardinia. Working in construction, it was natural for Vittorio to want to have an iconic winery that was both architecturally splendid, but also highly functional. And part of the complex here is a tunnel dug into the rock, and that's where I am at the moment. So as a wine, Petra is an IGT Toscana. It's principally a Bordeaux blend, and although they do have Sangiovese planted here, and at one stage they had Syrah planted, today the winery has decided to pull back and to focus on the Bordeaux grape varieties and the wines made from those. Petra is a blend of 60% of Cabernet Sauvignon, 30% of Merlot, and 10% of Cabernet Franc, all from 3 plots within the vineyard next to the winery here. In fact, the estate has 4 vineyard areas, 3 both surrounding and near the winery, and 1 slightly further to the north in Maremma. The soils here are clay-based. As you can see, there's limestone within the clay, but predominantly it's something called flich. And evidently flich is a sort of a mudstone, which is what the clay is derived from. As far as the soil is concerned for viticulture, the fact that there's a large proportion of stone in the soil means that it's relatively free draining, but the presence of the clay and the limestone means that there's good water reserves in an area where, until recent changeable weather, rainfall was normally somewhere in the region of 700 millimetres a year. We're not at particularly high altitude here, we're about 70 metres above sea level, and the climatic influence is very much from the sea. To identify the part of Toscana that we're talking about, the winery referred to this as Costa Toscana, and actually from the front of the winery there's a beautiful view down to the sea and out to the island of Elba. Until quite recently, viticulture here was practiced organically, although they've pulled away from that to be more sustainable. And the reason for that is that they didn't like the amount of copper sulphate being sprayed in the vineyard, believing that in the long term that can actually be quite damaging to the environment. But yes, they're aiming to make viticultural practices here sustainable. Now, the fruit for this was entirely hand-picked. Great perception here is at the top of the winery, and the estate has been built so that the fruit can be destemmed, can go into the top of the fermenting tanks without needing to be pumped at all, because putting fruit through a pump in that situation will break up the skins and the pips and will release harsh bitter elements into the wine that they're trying to avoid. Fermentation went on in stainless steel tanks. At this stage, fermentation temperatures were kept to about 30 degrees C at maximum, which is probably slightly more extractive than their current practice. Following fermentation and malolactic conversion in tank, the wines were put into barrel. Now, currently they're in the process of reducing the amount of time their wines spend in barrel in order to try and show the sort of the freshness, the perfumes and the aromas of the fruit better in the wines. At this stage, however, this wine will have spent 12 months in oak, this would be French oak, predominantly in barriques, and about 30% of those barrels were new. Having aged in barrel, once the wine was bottled, it was then aged in bottle for a further year prior to release onto the market. So let's take a look at the wine, shall we? First thing I'd say is it's got a good, deep, dark, ruby colour. It's not quite opaque. Give it a swirl here. You can see the wine adhering to the sides of the glass quite readily. It's certainly quite viscous. It's labelled as having 14.5% alcohol. I'm expecting it should have a reasonable tannic structure as well, so that's not a surprise. So let's take a look at the aromas, shall we? The wine is rich and ripe with concentrated, almost blackcurranty and licoricey notes on the nose. There's certainly a graphite note, and I think that's probably derived from the time in barrel. It's complex, it's powerful, and there's some nice ripeness coming through. So let's have a taste, shall we? The wine has a very fine structure, which is supported by good acidity. I can certainly feel my mouth watering there. There are cassis notes at first that are followed by notes of graphite and then slight cedriness. There are fine tannins, and again they're followed up by sort of notes of bitter licorice and graphite. The wine has a concentration and a structure. Its alcohol doesn't seem big and hot despite being 14%. Probably because of the freshness of the fruit that's being lifted by the wine's good acidity. There's some nice length leading to a lively black fruit finish, which is underpinned by hints of graphite. This is really quite a classy wine. Its firm texture means it still seems quite young, but at the same time it does have some really lovely, lively acidity. And tannins aren't particularly drying it out, that I should imagine, given a year or two, fruit might open out a little more and give a little more openness to the finish. As a wine for aging, I'm sure the wine has the concentration, the structure, and the acidity to age for 7 or 8 years very happily. And I'd be interested to track its progress through that period. I think this could develop really well. Having said that, given the wine's freshness and the beautiful dark fruit notes that are there, I think once it's softened out a little more, it'd be absolutely perfect to drink in a couple of years' time. I took a look at the Wine Search aggregated critic score for this vintage of this wine, and it scored 93 out of 100. And I think that score is just about right for this wine, for its intensity, its complexity, its balance, and its finesse. It's a high quality wine from the part of the world where top wines can be very expensive. I will leave a link to the Wine Searcher page for this vintage of this wine, so you can see that actually this wine is well priced for the quality that it delivers. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. That would be fantastic. If you're watching these tastings and you haven't subscribed yet, it would be marvellous if you considered doing that. That would really help me to develop the channel. And if you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please feel free to pass it on to them. That would be a fantastic endorsement coming from you. If you have any questions or comments, do please pop them in the comments box below. I'd love to hear from you about what you think about the tastings I'm doing, the wines I'm looking at, or anything else related to that. So thank you once again for taking the time to join me for this tasting, and I do hope that maybe you'll manage to find some time in the very near future to come and join me again. Hopefully I'll see you there. Bye for now.